Good evening. So I figured I would just do some of these videos, talk through some different ideas, things that have come up in conversation, or even questions at work, and see what ideas are out there, see if other people have feedback, or if not, just propose some new ideas. So this is a question that came up at work the other day. Basically, the question was, or more of a looking for advice. Looking to get a recommendation from any WordPress developers, want to make some customizations to a third-party plugin. They reached out to the developer, but don't want to wait around for them to make customizations. That may never happen. So they want to directly edit the plugin, but how do they approach that? One is, before, this developer who works for us used to work on Magento or other systems that have patching set up, right? I've never worked with Magento patching. I've worked with patching in OpenCart before. The concept there was, instead of editing the file directly, you create a patch. And so instead of accessing the original file, it would access your patch instead. So that's one way, or I guess you could have a system that overwrites the original with your patch. Just every time the original changes, if it's an update, it repatches it. So that's an idea. They could write their own plugin, right? Do I just write my own plugin imitating what that plugin did? Or should I consider moving that plugin to like the MU plugins folder, which is the must-use plugins? And that's kind of where they kind of came to with that, is how they would achieve that goal. So I thought about it and I was like, well, what recommendation would I give this person if, like, if they don't know where to go on this? So my initial idea was, first and foremost, WordPress has filters and actions to basically be hooks that can modify existing capabilities, or plugins implement their own hooks. So you can write an action, write a filter, and then those things can then modify it without touching the original. So that's one way of going, right? But at the same time, his case, it's like, well, the filter or the hook doesn't exist in where I need it to, so I can't really do that. You could do it maybe more downstream in weird ways, but be kind of not clean. So then the other option was like, okay, well, if you want to edit the original file, I guess you could, like, okay, I guess go take a step back. You could make it a must-use plugin. If it's a must-use plugin, though, it would basically lose the ability to update without you manually doing it, which I guess is all right, but then you have to keep track of that. So I don't know. That has its pros and cons. Is there something better we can do? Well, you could use the patching system. The idea with the patching system is you edit a file or overwrite a file anytime the plugin updates. So, like, what are ways you could do that? I was kind of looking into it, and I found this article. See if I can bring that to the front. So, what is the earliest action or hook you can call? Basically, looking at it, it looks like the quickest thing you can call is MU plugins loaded. Now, you're not using an MU plugin for that to actually fire, but you can still use that hook. So every time you hit WordPress, you check MU plugins loaded, and at that hook, you basically say, okay, the patch is basically seeing if we have the patch applied or not. So we would basically check that file, compare it, if that file is newer or not, and if it matches or not, and if the live file does not match what is our patch, we overwrite it. So how do we do that? Another article talks about that concept, verifying that two files are identical using PHP. Blah, blah. So you can compare, like, the known SHA one versus making a SHA of the new one. That's one way. You could do it via MD5 or other things. You could just do different file comparisons of different sorts. They talk through different ideas here on how to do that. So that's one way. They're doing file size comparisons, which would probably be good enough for most patches. So that's ways to compare it. And then, okay, so now you can say a simple check, is this file the same or is it newer? And we do that from there. If it isn't the same, it means we need to patch it. So in that case, we could probably use this copy function. Copy in PHP, simple thing is copy from our patch to the new file. Simple as that. Congrats, you just patched it. That solves all that. However, while in general that was going to work, there's one issue with that patching system. That patching system is going to potentially run into an issue of the file trying to copy. And when copying, the issue would be that that's not, what's the word, atomic. It's not atomic. What does that even mean? Atomic would be that it's basically not going to be like blocking, so you could actually, and someone could hit the page while the copy is still in progress. Doing so, the page would fail, could potentially break the patching as well, causing the critical error, etc. So that's not great. So what do we do about that? Another option is like the PHP copy option. You also have a PHP rename option. And so does rename necessarily solve all the problems, or does it create more nuances? Kind of both. So my thought is, okay, if you use rename, what you would do is you have your patched file, create a copy of it to like a random named item, and then you rename, use the PHP rename to put it to your end destination. So that process is the atomic process that would prevent any sort of duplicates. Copying to a random name in the middle as like a middle step would always be a random name, so it wouldn't have any conflicts. So that would work, be an okay solution. Another thought is, what if we just say, okay, well, the atomic problem is annoying, but WordPress already has a built-in way to run updates without causing conflicts, so why don't we use that? So why don't we just go back to the original copy and call it a day? We could do that. Before we hit copy, we could actually initialize the WordPress maintenance mode. Maintenance mode is, I believe it's basically, it sets a file, I forget the file is, at the root directory. If that file exists, it puts it in maintenance mode. So we could just manually trigger maintenance mode by either putting that file there. There's probably a call in WordPress, I don't know offhand, to initialize that. So maintenance mode starts, we perform the copy. Once the copy is done, we disable maintenance mode. So even if someone else hits it at the same time frame, it doesn't cause any conflicts. It just gives them a little notice that there is maintenance happening. Now, the downside is I guess there's a slight time frame where there could be a downtime, but again, it's probably milliseconds, so probably pretty minimal. And unless your site's really getting tons of traffic, that's probably a non-issue. So that probably would be the cleaner way of handling that. So, what WordPress patching system, what do we do with that? Have a patch. Funny enough, even though we're not using MU plugin in this case, to overwrite the plugin, our patch is probably written as a MU plugin. So we have MU plugin that then also, I guess after the MU plugin loads, it then sees the filter for MU plugins loaded. That filter then checks a file comparison. That's, oh, these are either are the same file, don't worry about it, or these are two different files, let's keep going. If they're two different files, it says toss it in maintenance mode, copy the file over, copy the patch over the plugin's original version of it, and end maintenance mode. And you move on, and every forward check will say, oh, already patched, and then that'll only ever get triggered again at point in which the plugin is updated and the files are out of sync, etc. Now that's if you're patching the whole file. If you're just patching certain lines, I guess you'd have to have a more sophisticated check instead of just copying. You'd want to do like load the file, do a lookup, and then modify certain things within there. But I don't think that's the issue in this case. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. If you've ever done this before, you've ever created a WordPress patch, leave a comment below. I'd be really interested in hearing about that. But if you think it's a terrible idea and my solution has flaws, gotchas, let me know, because I'd be curious about what I might be overthinking, what issues come with that. Yeah. All right. And if you like the idea and actually implement it, I'd be curious to see your code and how it works for you. All right. Thanks, guys.